The letter looked harmless, just a plain white envelope sitting between grocery coupons and the water bill. But the moment I opened it, my life split clean in two. Confirmation of distribution, it said. $92,000. Gone. Transferred. Authorized by someone I trusted more than anyone else on this earth. My daughter. I read the line 3 times before the meaning even landed. My hands were shaking so bad I thought maybe I'd misread it. But no, her name was right there beside mine in tiny legal print. I picked up the phone, called the number, and prayed it was a mistake. The woman on the other end was gentle, polite. "It was requested by your financial representative," she said. "A Miss Brianna Turner." Representative. My own child had made herself the keeper of my future and spent it without asking. I stood in that kitchen with the collard greens wilting on the counter, realizing every sacrifice I'd ever made, every bill paid late, every shift I worked double for her, had just been turned into somebody's business plan. That was the morning I learned the hardest truth of getting older. Sometimes the hand you fed ends up holding the knife. But I wasn't finished yet. I'd been a nurse for 40 years. I know how to stop the bleeding. I poured the water over my tea bag, leaned my hip against the counter, and looked at the envelope again. Peachtree Health System Retirement Services. I smiled. Finally, my yearly update. I pictured the small ritual I've kept since retiring at 67. I would read the statement, draw a circle around the balance with my favorite blue pen, whisper a thank you to God, and tuck it into the folder where my future lives. A microwave beeped in the distance. My neighbor must be reheating yesterday's casserole. In our little cluster of ranch houses, we can hear one another living, and that used to bother me, but now it comforts me. We are, even in our loneliness, not alone. I sat, the tea breathing steam into my face, and slid a butter knife under the envelope's lip. Paper rasped. I unfolded the letter. I read the first line without really reading it, as you do. Confirmation of distribution. The second line hooked my eyes. This letter confirms the early distribution of $92,000 from your pension account on, and here was the part my mind seized and refused to move past, authorized by your designated financial representative as of last Friday. The kettle would have been screaming if I hadn't unplugged it already. A breeze that wasn't a breeze moved across my skin. I read it again, louder, as if my own voice could correct a misprint. Early distribution, $92,000, authorized. The letters swam. I checked the envelope for the wrong name, wrong address. But there, Ms. Evelyn Turner, spelled right, my house number, my street, my city. I held the paper in both hands to stop the shaking and felt it tremble anyway. My phone buzzed on the table, bright with a text from my daughter. "Mama, you free later? Need to chat. Big week. Heart." I stared at the heart, the little pulse of it. Brianna's Bitmoji smiling with the dramatic lashes she always gives herself. I had been saving for my grandchildren's Christmas already, setting aside $5 bills like bin prayers inside a china teacup. 92,000 was more than a number. It was the air I'd planned to breathe for the final stretch of my race. It was the soft half of my old age, the part I promised myself wouldn't hurt. I stood up too fast. The chair legs scraped loud enough to spook the sparrows on the porch. My nursing brain did a roll call. Pulse fast but regular. Breathing shallow. Slow it down, Evelyn. Think. The letter listed a phone number and a case ID. I dialed. The music that came through was cheerful. I stared at my refrigerator magnets. Kendall's second grade spelling bee photo, Micah's world's best Nana drawing with my head shaped like an orange. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear as if the pressure could keep me anchored. "Peachtree Health System Retirement Services, this is Ms. Alvarez," a voice said, polite, efficient. "Can I have your name and the case ID?" I gave both. I gave my date of birth. I gave the answer to the secret question about my first pet, Mr. Boots, which made me want to cry. "Thank you, Miss Turner," Ms. Alvarez said. "How can I help this morning?" "This letter," I said, and my voice sounded like it had come down the hall. "This letter says there was an early distribution, $92,000, authorized by a designated financial representative. I did not authorize any such thing. There must be some mistake." Miss Alvarez paused as her keyboard pattered like rain. "I see the distribution, ma'am. It was requested via e-sign last week. The form is signed by, one moment, by your financial power of attorney on file, a Miss Brianna Turner. There were 2-factor verification codes sent to the email and the phone number on file, which, let me confirm, are the numbers ending in," she read my smartphone digits like a confession, "and the email that ends with," she read my email's first half, "nurse.evelyn," and my brain snagged again. I didn't receive any verification codes. I always receive codes. I guard those codes like they are oxygen. She said, and now her tone softened. "Sometimes, if a representative has been designated as primary on the account, the codes route to their contact information. It looks like Miss Turner updated the contact to her number 2 months ago, ma'am. She's listed as your primary financial representative with authority to act." 2 months? I repeated. And then I remembered. 2 months ago, Brianna had come over with Panera bags and that tired, clipped tone she used when she was bracing me for a talk. "Mama, can you sign a couple forms so I can take care of the online stuff for you? It's just so I can help with your statements. You don't have to worry about clicking all those confusing links. You know those phishing scams." She had laughed. I had laughed too. I had signed with my favorite blue pen while she showed me a Canva flyer for a caregiver wellness weekend she was planning. "So proud of you," I had said, "doing something for people like me." I swallowed hard. "I never authorized any distribution," I said again. "What were the funds sent to?" "Let me check," Miss Alvarez said, softly, like she was setting down a delicate tray. "It was transferred to an account ending in 3017. The receiving bank lists the name as the Wellnest Foundation." "The Wellnest Foundation?" I said, and the repetition tasted like metal. "What is that?" "I wouldn't know, ma'am. I'm sorry. I can email you the distribution paperwork for your records, and we can start a fraud review if you're disputing the authorization." "I am," I said, though the word felt too clean for what was happening in me. "Yes, start it. And please remove Brianna Turner from any primary designation and any contact that receives codes. I want my own phone and email restored." "I can do that, ma'am," she said, "and I'll also flag the account so no further distributions can be made until you present in person or speak with me directly. Do you have anyone else you'd like to designate as your representative?" "No, no one." The silence yawned between us like a new room. I'm her mother," I added in a whisper, not sure why that mattered to say to a stranger. "I understand," Miss Alvarez said, and somehow I believed she did. "I'm sorry you're dealing with this. We'll email you the documents. Do you have help?" I thought of my friend Laverne from church, who made the best cornbread in DeKalb County and knew every widow's phone number by heart. "Yes," I lied. "I'll be all right." After we hung up, the kitchen went hush. The collards were still there, stacked like green hands. The tea had cooled. I looked at the letter again, then slid it under the ceramic rooster that holds my bills, as if a bird could guard a future. At noon, I drove the pot roast I had promised to Brianna and the kids. I told myself I would act normal, that I wouldn't mention anything until I had the documents, until I had let the shock settle into something I could fold and put away. Her townhome near Edgewood is new and sharp and glassy, all right angles and black metal railings. She likes to pretend the belt line belongs to her, to belong to it. I climbed the stairs with the warm pan between my hands like an offering and rang the bell. I heard her voice before I saw her. Brianna's voice is light, with that bright marketing lilt she puts on to soften everything. "Guys, this is huge," she was saying to someone, breathless, excited. "The transfer cleared. No, like actually cleared. 92. We can finally book the retreat contract. The cabins at Blue Fern, yes, we got them. And I'm locking in Aerie for the mindfulness series and Jasper for the high-ticket coaching. And girl, this is going to be the one that breaks us out. I told you my mom would come through. No, she won't miss it. She hardly checks the email. Stop worrying." I didn't knock again. I didn't even set the pan down. My heart did that strange doubling it does sometimes when you take the stairs too fast. On the coffee table in the living room, I could see a tablet propped against a vase, a zoom grid of smiling women in lemon yellow blazers. On the screen was a slide that read, "The Wellnest Foundation. Rest is a right." Under that, Brianna's face, my Brianna, chin up, edges laid, lip gloss catching the afternoon. She saw me mid-sentence, gestured for me to wait with an upturned palm, the same way she used to when she was 7 and wanted to finish a system on her Barbie dream house. She clicked mute, slid the door to the patio, and stepped out. "Mama?" She mouthed through the glass with a big grin that didn't reach her eyes, then slid the door open. "Is that the roast? Oh God, you're a lifesaver. Kendall has a piano thing, and Micah has soccer, and I still haven't... Can you put it in the oven? I'm right in the middle of something. I'll call you later. Crazy day." "The Wellnest Foundation," I said. The words didn't fit in my mouth right. "Brianna, what did you do?" She blinked. If guilt has a sound, I swear I could hear it then in the way her breath hitched. She tucked a strand behind her ear, straightened her blazer, pasted the smile back on as if I were a client. "It's my nonprofit, Mama. We've talked about this. I help caregivers. I told you. Look, I can't... Can we talk later? I have to..." "You took my pension," I said. I did not raise my voice. $92,000. You took it. She looked away, just for a heartbeat, toward the tablet. She unmuted herself. "Hey, you guys keep going through the budget doc. Give me 5. I'm dealing with a little home thing, okay? 5. She muted again, turned back to me. The smile was gone now. "Mama, please don't do this here." "Where should I do it? In the parking lot? In the produce aisle at Publix? In front of Kendall and Micah?" The roast was heavy now, burning my palms. I walked to the kitchen and set it on the stove. Other people's kitchens always feel colder, no matter how new. I said, "It's just to help with statements," I said quietly. "You filled out forms on my kitchen table. You changed the codes. You moved $92,000 to something called Wellnest." "It's not stealing," she said, like she was choosing the gentlest synonym. "It's investing. The nonprofit pays me a salary, like a modest one, and then the retreats will cover the rest. The donors will replenish the account. You'll be fine. I planned it all out. I needed a startup loan. People do this all the time. They seed their own nonprofits and then fundraise." "People do a lot of things all the time and still go to jail for them," I said. "You lied to me. You weren't going to spend it," she said, and now the tantrum in her tone rose, that one that had embarrassed me in grocery stores when she was little and that I had spent half a lifetime smoothing. "You live like a nun. You buy all your clothes at Ross, you make soup from bones, you give away half your money to people who don't even say thank you. I gave to you," I said, and it was not an accusation so much as a confession I had to hear out loud. "Rent when you were between jobs, the used Prius when the Camry died, the dentist after Micah chipped his tooth, the Airbnb near Tybee when you said you needed to breathe. I gave, and I did not ask for receipts because that is not what mothers do." "I know," she said quickly, as if cutting off the part of me that still wanted to reach for her. "And I'm grateful. You know I am. But this This is my vision, Mama. This is our future. Imagine me actually doing something that matters. The retreat center in Blue Ridge, it's magic. Cedar tubs, cold plunges, the cabins smell like heaven. The content alone will explode. We'll sell out to nurses, teachers, pastors' wives, all the women who never put themselves first. I'll give scholarships. I'll put your name on a wall. The Evelyn Turner Scholarship for Caregivers. Doesn't that sound beautiful? It sounds like you wrap theft in a ribbon. I said softly, and my voice made her flinch because I never spoke to her with that many syllables of steel. And you already spent the money, didn't you? Mama, can we please go outside? She whispered, glancing at the tablet, at the blonde woman in a yellow blazer pretending not to watch us through the camera. Please. I stared at her, at the tiny freckle on her left cheek that I could kiss blind, at the neck where she used to fall asleep when her asthma was bad and I would hold her upright against my chest and count her breaths until dawn. Then I turned and walked out with nothing. Not the roast, not my purse, not my keys, on purpose, as if leaving without them could mean leaving without the truth too. I stood on the townhome stoop and watched a boy ride down the street on a scooter, one knee bandaged and bright with cartoon sharks. It was a perfect day. It made me angry that the day dared to be pretty. When I got home, I called Laverne because she has the kind of voice that can bring you back to the ground. I can be there in 10, she said when I told her. Already halfway out her door, I heard the wind hit her phone like a rush of wings. Evelyn, you did nothing wrong. You remember that, even when you forget everything else. I made us coffee because coffee is a language for shock. I set out the sugar and the milk and the little vanilla syrup I keep for when the grandkids come because they think it's fancy. I also pulled out my old nurse's notebook, the one with the soft leather cover and my name embossed from my retirement party, and a smooth pen that makes me write neater than I feel. On the first line, I wrote, "What I have given," and then I wrote dates and amounts and notes to glue the numbers to the life around them. 3 months' rent when the divorce was final, $2,400. The time Brianna crashed into the mailbox on Ponce in a rainstorm and twisted her wrist and couldn't work for 2 weeks, $600. Kendall's asthma machine when the old one rattled like a tractor, $350. The soccer cleats because Micah grew 2 shoe sizes in a summer, $78. A retreat deposit of $5,000 last fall, which I had understood to be for the church ladies' weekend until I saw the photos and realized it was for a group of pretty girls doing goat yoga. I wrote that one too. $5,000 and next to it, goats. The tally, by the time I stopped, was a bruise of numbers. $31,428 over 3 years. Not counting whatever I'd slipped into her palm or the grocery tabs I covered without calling them by their name. I cried then, not because of the money, but because counting the love hurts more than giving it. That night, I could not sleep. I stared at the ceiling and saw breath like fog. I got up at 2 to pee and my knees creaked like the house. I stood in the hallway and stared at the little linen closet where Louis used to keep his toolbox on the bottom shelf. He had organized the screws and baby food jars, all labeled, a tiny mason's cathedral of silver. I opened the closet on a whim and pulled down a dusty shoebox, because grief makes you reach for things even when you don't know why you're reaching. Inside were the oddest artifacts. A stop-motion flip book of Kendall dancing in a tutu, the key to a lock I didn't recognize, and a letter with my name on it, written in my husband's looping, careful hand, the kind of hand men in his generation learned before computers taught everyone to type instead of write. The date at the top was 8 months before he died. I sat down on the hall rug without turning on any lights, the moon the only witness, and read. Evie, the letter began. He only called me that when he was soft with love or scared of something. If you're reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to say it while I was here. I took out a line of credit against the house after the kitchen remodel. $12,000 turned into too much and I let it be too much. I meant to fix it. It escalated. I didn't want to burden you. I know I should have told you. It went on like that, confession wrapped in apology. Brianna knows about some of it, he wrote. She's helped me a couple times manage a payment or two when I needed to make rent on the shop. I asked her not to alarm you. She loves you, but I knew you'd lose sleep. I'm sorry, Evie. For the lies, for the wait. I wanted to leave you light, like a morning with no fog. I failed. Forgive me. I held that page the way you hold a hot plate with a towel, careful not to let it touch too long. I cannot tell if what I felt then was relief or another kind of anger that wears relief like a mask. It explained things. The missing 100 here, the credit card charge there, the tightness around his eyes when the mail came. It explained something else too that I didn't want to admit. It gave Brianna a practice run at secrecy. My husband had taught my daughter how to hide things from me in the name of love. I fell asleep at dawn with the letter folded under my pillow, as if I could absorb it, like a child sleeping on a book before a test. At 9, I dressed in my church pants and a clean blouse and went to the credit union where I have kept my checking since 1991. Banks make me nervous with their smell of carpet and their quiet fissure of shuffling paper, but the women behind the counter know me. Miss Lynn at the window said, "Morning, Miss Evelyn," and handed me a peppermint like always. I sat with a woman named Angie who wore bright pink glasses and had a bowl of hand sanitizer on her desk with a label that said "Bless you," though I don't think she meant it as a prayer so much as a motto. I need to revoke anyone who has access to my accounts. Anyone. I need to change my passwords, my codes, my buttons, my pins. If the spacebar on my computer has a code, I want that code changed too. Of course, she said, kind and brisk in the way of women who know what it means to be done being polite. We clicked, we typed, we reset. She suggested a new savings account in a separate number series for peace of mind. She offered to enroll me in paper statements again to send them to a P.O. box if I wanted. Sometimes people sleep better when the paper is real, she said. I do, I said. I like to hold the thing that scares me. When I left, I did not feel like dancing or whooping or calling anybody to say, "Look at me, I am strong." I felt like a bone set in a cast, still fragile, protected while it remembers how to be solid. I called an attorney on Laverne's recommendation, a black woman with a soft afro and shoes too sensible to be anything but honest. Her name was Renee Whitaker, and her office was 4 floors up in a building that smelt like old carpet and lemon cleaner. She offered me water, and I took it because my hands needed to hold something that didn't shake. I don't want to press charges against my daughter, I said before we were even settled. I need you to hear me say that out loud. I don't want to call her a criminal. I want my life back. I want my future to feel like mine, and I want to make sure I never again hand over my keys in the name of love and call it trust. Renee nodded. Those things can all be true at once, she said. We can explore civil remedies, a demand letter to the nonprofit, a repayment plan, a secure promissory note. We can also file a report to protect you with the state if there's elder financial exploitation. That doesn't mean they'll cuff her and drag her out of a PTA meeting. It simply puts things on record so no one can say later they didn't know. And we should update your will and your powers of attorney. You need a medical POA, not a financial one, or at least you need to control both. You need a trust if you want to put conditions around anything you leave. We can make sure your daughter's access to your accounts is precisely what you want it to be. Respectful, not automatic. Respectful, not automatic, I repeated like it was a prayer. Yes.
Renee took notes with a fountain pen that made a little scratchy music on the paper. She explained things that sounded like a foreign language until she translated them. Revocation, restitution, liquidated damages, fiduciary breach. She made me sign documents with a steadying hand under mine, not because I needed help writing my name, but because sometimes you need someone to anchor your body to the pen. At the end, she asked, "Do you have support? A friend or a pastor? Someone you can ugly cry in front of without having to apologize after? Lavarn, I said, and God. Both excellent choices, she said. In the parking lot, I sat for a full minute with both hands on the steering wheel and listened to the car tick as it cooled, though I hadn't even turned it on yet. The world outside was busy. Delivery trucks, a wiry man jogging in neon shorts, a mother dragging a toddler who did not want to leave the pigeon cluster. Life clicks forward, small teeth on a gear. It does not pause because you discover a new fault line in your family. For 3 days, I did not answer Brianna's calls. My phone stacked with her missed calls like planks, with her texts like birds pecking at my silence. Mama, we need to talk. Mama, you're not being rational. Mama, it's so much has happened. Can I swing by? Mama, at least tell me you're okay. Mama, if this is about the money, we can figure it out. The ones that hurt were the voice memos with the ragged breath, the half-sobbed "I'm sorry" that always arrived after she realized charm alone was not going to work this time. On the 4th day, she texted, "Coming over at 4, we need to fix this." And because I am a mother, and my legs still walk toward my child even when my head says stop, I didn't lock the door. She came with the brightness cranked up to blinding, like a ring light set to 10. With a woman I recognized vaguely from the Zoom, Ari, all nails and lashes and long hair scraped into a ponytail that could double as the tail of a horse worth more than my car. Ari wanted to come, as if she hadn't planned to bring her, as if it were a surprise visitor from the universe. She's my program director. We're like mid-launch, and there are legal things, and... No, I said. If you want to bring someone to my house when you are about to apologize, it should be Jesus. I don't accept representatives. Ari blinked, looked at Brianna, looked back at me. Miss Turner, she said, switching to the respectful tone like sliding into a fresh dress. I just want you to know Brianna loves you fiercely. She talks about you all the time. You're the reason she got into the caregiver space. I am a caregiver. I am not a space. Ari's eyebrows did a little jump. Of course, I just mean, thank you, but this is between my daughter and me. Ari left her business card on my table anyway, as if her name printed on thick paper could heal a breach. When she closed the door, my house felt like itself again. Brianna shifted from one foot to the other. When she was 4, she used to do the same thing when she had the pee but was too engaged in her game to go. She has always thought she could outweight discomfort. She has always been half right, because my love made the waiting easy. Not anymore.
Sit, I said, and she did. I sat across from her at the table where I had signed the power of attorney papers 2 months ago, the table where we had decorated cookies last Christmas, where she had once spilled orange juice and sobbed because she thought she'd ruined my Bible. I thought of all the messes I had cleaned up for her, private and public, and decided to clean this one by letting it stink in the air where it belonged, instead of wiping it up before it had a chance to teach us anything. I know this looks bad, she said, her voice already aiming for a place where it could land soft, and I am sorry. I should have told you. I should have made you sit down. You know how you get when you see big numbers. I didn't think you would understand. I didn't think you would treat me like a person, I said. You didn't think I would treat you like a person. That's what you were going to say. That I would go nurse mode and make a plan and forget your feelings. Honey, I raised you. When have I ever forgotten your feelings? My voice cracked on the last word, small, honest crack that hurt the way it hurts when you stretch something that's been stiff too long. Her own eyes watered at that. Good. Tears don't heal, but they'd tell the truth. Mama, she said, softer. It wasn't just greed. It wasn't. She exhaled a laugh that wasn't really a laugh, just greed. I know that's what it looks like, but after Daddy died, there were letters. He told me about the house line of credit. I know, I said. I found the letter. He put you between us. He made you keep secrets so I would sleep. She rubbed her temples. He meant well, she said, as if reciting a creed she had memorized to survive his absence. He always meant well. That's what all the men who taught their families to lie always say. Meaning well is a blanket you can't put over a fire. She stared at me. If there is a sound to pride breaking in a child's eyes when they realize a parent is not a fool, I heard it then, even if it was only inside my head. She glanced away toward my kitchen window. The oak in the backyard was full of tiny, tight green fists of leaves about to open. The sky made a promise it would keep without asking for permission. The nonprofit is real, she said thinly. We filed the papers, we have a board, we rented the cabins, the modules are written. We have speakers lined up. The retreat is next month. If I cancel now, I'm done. You understand? Done. I will be a joke. Everyone will know. I will have to move again. The kids will have to change schools. I will lose everything. It sounds like you already lost something and are hoping this can make it hurt less. I leaned forward, put my elbows on the table, laced my fingers, and waited until her eyes met mine, because this part had to land in the exact center. You took my money without telling me to create a life you could show on the internet. You are asking me to bless a theft because you put it in a brochure. She flinched. It's not like that. Then tried the laugh again. Well, maybe it is a little like that. But also, Mama, there are caregivers out there who need rest. You know this. You were one. You are one. I am one, I said, and my voice warmed against the steel just a little, because I am both a sword and a balm. Nurses are like that, which is why I can smell when the care is a costume. If you want to start a foundation, you will start the way the women at New Hope start anything, with pie sales and donations that came hard and honest, with budgets that match the math, with receipts that don't squint in the light. You won't start it with my lungs. She sat still so long I could hear the wall clock. Finally, she asked, very quietly, "What do you want me to do?" I had rehearsed this. I had written it out on a piece of paper and practiced saying it into my bathroom mirror, because sometimes you have to hear your own mouth declare you are allowed to live with dignity. You will sign a promissory note drafted by my attorney for the full amount that left my pension plus interest. You will have the foundation's board, if it is real, vote to freeze spending except for refunds to me. You will bring me the board roster with actual names and employment. You will put my pension back if you have to sell that ring light and every tiny golden frame on your wall. You will step down as an officer from the foundation until you complete a financial literacy course that isn't taught by somebody who calls themselves a CEO on Instagram because they bought a suit. And you will send a letter to Peachtree Health System acknowledging you acted as my representative without telling me what you intended to do. Her mouth opened, then shut. The first wave is always shock. The second wave is always bargaining. I braced for it like a lifeguard bracing for surf. "Mama," she said, her teeth against her lip, "that will ruin me." "No," I said, standing, "this will save you. If my name is on the line for your dream, then your character is on the line for my future. That is the exchange you made without asking me. Now I am asking you. Choose the version of yourself that can look her children in the eye and tell them she made it right. Her hands flew up and covered her face, and she sobbed so hard it scared me for a second, because grief sounds like choking when it gets to the place where words can't live. The part of me that is mother stood up instinctively and moved toward her. The part of me that is woman, that is old, that is done being used, made my feet stay planted. She cried, and I listened. It is a holy skill, hearing your child weep and not moving, letting them meet the pain they caused in the same room as the pain they feel. It took me 69 years to learn it. I hate that you think I'm a thief, she said into her hands, voice muffled and small, like a little girl under a blanket. I hate that you took my choice away, I said. We are even then in the hating. We did not hug when she left. She did not slam my door. She wore her sunglasses like armor, even though the afternoon was mild. She texted 6 hours later. Tell your lawyer to send whatever, I'll sign. It was not repentance so much as a woman backed into a corner who saw a map on the wall. I took it. The next 2 weeks were open hands and tight throats. Renee drafted the documents, asked me questions that made me feel both foolish and smart. What boundaries have you actually kept with your daughter versus the ones you only said out loud in your head? And what would you do with $92,000 if you had it back? I answered like a nurse taking a triage history. I told the truth in short sentences. I mailed the letter to Peachtree that used legal words I didn't enjoy reading, like exploitation and breach, and words I liked because they felt like a scalpel cutting away rot, revocation, restitution. I did not go to church the first Sunday because I didn't want to cry in front of the choir. I prayed at home with a spoon in my hand, stirring, because the stirring calms me. At night, when the house grew quiet and the refrigerator's voice was the only voice, I would take out Lewis's letter and read it again, not to blame him or absolve him, but because marriage is a covenant written across two bodies with a pen nobody teaches you how to hold correctly. He had been a good man who made mistakes. I was a good woman who had let love make me available before it made me safe. Brianna was a good girl who had learned too young that shining is a way to get love even when you don't deserve it. Knowing these things did not change what had happened, but it did soften the edges enough for me to hold them without bleeding. One afternoon, I went to the park on Claremont, the one with the big pecan tree that looks like a grandmother who sees all and still smiles. Laverne met me on the bench with a paper bag of lemon bars that she pretended were just a little something, like she didn't know they were my favorite. We watched a little group of toddlers chase bubbles, watched a teenager teaching his little sister how to ride a bike, watched a couple break up and make up in the space of 20 minutes, all their drama like a sung duet we couldn't quite make out. You know what I think? Laverne said after a while, picking pecan pie crumbs from her cardigan. I think you were doing the part women my age rarely get to do. We think the part of the story where you choose yourself was for your 20s, but here you are, choosing yourself in your late 60s. There's a particular kind of beauty in that. It takes guts. I don't feel beautiful. I feel like a walnut. You never crack a walnut? She asked. Take some doing. We laughed softly. The sun angled itself lower in the sky and made the park all gold, like a generous God had left his coins in the grass for children to find. When the paperwork landed in my email, I printed it and held the pages like a passport, thick with truth. Brianna's signature looked exactly like it used to when she forged my name in 8th grade to get out of gym class. Dramatic loops, overly confident flourish. I wondered if she recognized the irony when she signed. If her hand remembered that girl, and if that girl had whispered to this woman, "Look at yourself," still trying to cheat the system and calling it care. The foundation froze its accounts. A set of payments was scheduled back to my retirement account in monthly installments. It would take years, a long horizon kind of forgiveness. I would be 80 before the last dollar walked back home. In the meantime, I learned to live with just enough. Just enough is a kind of wealth when you've learned that too much can hurt you. A week later, Brianna came by at dinner time with a Tupperware of something that looked like couscous and tasted like the memory of a salad. It's quinoa. It's good for you. She didn't stay. The kids were in the car, their faces glowing blue from an iPad, and she didn't want to bring them inside because she was not ready to explain to their grandmother what she had done to their future bedtime stories. On the porch, she said, I signed up for a financial class at the community college and a nonprofit governance course that Pastor Gray recommended, and I'm stepping back. I told Ari she can run the first retreat without me. You told her you stole from your mother? I asked, because sometimes kindness looks like a question that makes a person stand up inside themselves. She said, I told her I made a mistake, a big one. She told me to own my narrative, and I told her this isn't a narrative, it's a life. Good, I said. And then we stood in the quiet, mother and daughter, the sky slipping toward blue. Can I ask you something? She said finally. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with the money when it comes back? I'm going to live. I'm going to buy the good butter and the expensive strawberries when they are sweet. I'm going to get my roof fixed so I don't have to set pots in the hallway when it rains. I'm going to pay Bernice's boy to mow my lawn so I don't throw my back out being proud. And I'm going to start something that doesn't need a logo to be true. She tilted her head. Like what? You'll see if you show up, which is the gentle way of saying, I won't build anything you can steal when you're lonely. That Friday, I brought a pot of chicken soup to Mr. Reed down the street because his gout had flared and he lives alone, his wife gone 6 summers and counting. We sat at his too clean kitchen table while he told me stories about Alabama and the Buick Skylark he still keeps under a tarp like a sleeping thing. He took 2 sips of the broth and closed his eyes like church. You always season like you're loving someone. I wrote that compliment down later on a Post-it note so I could read it when the house sounded like a cave. On Sunday, I went back to church. I sat beside Laverne and let her elbow nudge me when we got to the part of the hymn that benefits from a harmony. And yes, we still blush a little when Pastor Gray calls us the mothers, but you'll have to pry that title from our cold hands because we earned it with casseroles and secrets and long nights. After the service, I stood by the folding table that held all the flyers and sign-up sheets where dreams get their paper names: tutoring, food pantry, line dancing. I added a yellow page. I wrote at the top, Turner Circle, Wednesdays at 6 p.m., New Hope AME Fellowship Hall, Caregivers Workroom. No hashtags, no speeches, just a room with good chairs, soup, budgeting aid, legal Q&A once a month. A visiting massage therapist will tip in cash and respect. A Don't Touch My Future workshop for grandmothers who need to reclaim their finances from any child, sainted or otherwise. Bring your own mug. I put my phone number at the bottom and slipped the sheet protectors onto the prongs like a librarian with a secret. I did not know if anyone would show. But at 6 that Wednesday, the fellowship hall smelled like coffee and Lysol, and 10 women sat down, the chairs scraping the tile like a kind of music. Miss Janice brought cornbread that collapsed in the center and was better for it. Tasha, who works nights at Kroger, came straight from work and used my hand cream like holy oil and laughed until she cried when she read the title out loud. Don't touch my future, she cackled. Lord, ain't that the word? We passed around a clipboard, and the clipboard made things real. We passed around a heavy jar that had started as my pickle jar, and I wrote Rides Fund in black marker on a label and stuck it on. And women put 1s and 2s and coins, and money isn't just money in a room with soup, it is permission. After 2 months, we had a little routine that felt like rhythm. A half hour of How was your week, where no one was allowed to say fine. 20 minutes of what bills came in and what do they mean, and one guest who knew something useful and didn't condescend. We learned about wills, about scams that look like love and love that looks like scams. Renee came one week and stayed 2 hours answering questions until the church custodian flicked the lights twice, the way men flick lights when they want women to feel rushed. She answered the hardest question. What do I do when my son threatens to not bring the baby over if I don't help? With a patience that made me love her like kin. She said, you set the boundary and then you grieve it, and then you do not move it. We passed the tissue box, but we also passed the lemon bars. Brianna showed up on the 4th Wednesday. She slipped into a back chair in a hoodie like a teenager in trouble, and I counted 3 whole minutes before I looked at her. She watched the woman at the front talk about unrestricted gifts with a kind of haunted attention. At the end, she helped fold the chairs, her movement small. She said, "This is good, what you're doing. It's good." "It is," I said. "You can come if you check your jargon at the door and leave your pitch deck in the car." She smiled. A real one. She said, "Okay, deal." In the quiet at home, I read more than I watched TV because the TV gets dramatic in a way that exhausts me, where books just hold me and breathe back. I took a watercolor class at the rec center and painted the same pecan tree 3 weeks in a row until my version of it started to look like a memory instead of a thing you could touch, and I like that fine. I bought new sheets that felt like a cool, good secret. I put fresh numbers on my house because H has taught me sometimes the simple act of saying, "Here I am," in large characters can save your life.
Kendall called one Thursday night. "Nana," she said, whispering like she was sharing confidential intel, "we're learning When the Saints Go Marching in piano. Do you want to hear?" I put her on speaker, and she plunked the little notes like coins into a dish, a recognizable melody hiding under the hesitations. Micah asked if he could come sleep over Saturday. I said yes. I said yes to both of them because children should not pay for adults' lessons, only learn from them quietly, steadily, like sugar melting into tea. You'd think the story ends here because the paperwork is signed and the program is funded, and Brianna chokes a little less when she calls me, and the women at Turner Circle bring empty jars back full, and the bank statements come on paper to my hand. But life, that multi-armed creature, had one more twist it wanted to give me. So I let it. One afternoon in late September, a man in a button-down and boots knocked on my door. He introduced himself as Jasper Cole. "I work with Ari, Brianna's friend. We've met, but you probably don't remember. You had on a green sweater." He smiled like he was placing me on a shelf he visits from time to time. I wanted to clear the air. "Air doesn't clear itself when men show up with smiles," I said before I could stop myself. "What do you want?" He shifted, and his charm slipped like a cheap ring. "We've had to delay the Blue Fern retreat. Venue issues. Refunds are complicated. Look, Miss Turner, Brianna signed notes she can't keep. I'm advising her to file Chapter 13. And I'm advising you to step off my porch," I said. He blinked. I am not a tall woman, but I can look like a grandmother the devil would think twice about. "You tell my daughter that if a man who calls himself a coach and uses words like alignment tries to put my child on a cliff, I will plant myself at the bottom and catch her, but then I will climb back up and push him off. And if he thinks of using my money to cushion his fall, he better learn to bounce." His face colored in a way I found pleasing. "Ma'am," he said tightly, "there's no need to get adversarial. There is. That's exactly what there is. Good day." Later, Brianna texted me 5 words. "I didn't send him, Mama." I stayed at the screen a long moment and decided to believe her. The next morning, she showed up on my porch with no makeup and the kind of red around her nose that tells you a woman's cried her way into a headache. "They want me to file," she said. "They say it's the smart thing. They say it'll protect me." It will, in some ways. It will also mark you for 7 years in ink. It will let you jump to a new shore while the people you owe drift downstream. It is a tool. It is not a cure. It will not heal your character. I don't want to do it. I want to pay you back. Then pay me back. Take a job. Not a lifestyle, not a build your brand thing, a job. If you have to stock shelves all night and cry into the yogurt, do it. If you have to drive a bus route and come home smelling like diesel and Triumph, do it. If you have to work 2 jobs until you remember what honest tired feels like, do it. And when you cannot, lean. Not lean on me for money, lean on me for soup. "Okay," she whispered. She took a job answering phones at a dentist's office in Kirkwood and a weekend shift hostessing at a restaurant where the napkins are cloth and the bread is free. She hated both jobs and learned to like them because liking something you hate is a skill that will carry you through more fires than love. She sent me screenshots of her payments.
$300. I know it's not a lot. I texted back, "It is not the amount. It is the habit." I kept my receipts like trophies, not because they were victories over her, but because they were victories over the part of me that would always, always want to fix my child's pain by breaking myself in two. Every time a payment landed, I said out loud, "I am not a bank." And then softer, "I am a mother." Both truths can live in one throat if you let them. On Christmas Eve, the kids came to bake cookies, and I let them spill flour and crack eggs with the reckless confidence of children who know the mess is somebody else's problem. Brianna leaned against my counter, hair tied up, eyes clear. "Do you remember," she asked, "when I was little and you used to take me to that community pool and you'd sit on the edge with your legs in the water because you worked all night and were too tired to swim?" "I remember," I said. The sun through the blinds turned my kitchen into a memory. "And you'd still clap for me when I came up from the deep end," she said, smiling. "Even when I just went under 3 inches and pretended it was a big thing. You clapped like I'd returned from Atlantis." "It felt like it to me," I said. "I want to make you clap again," she said, "for something that isn't a lie." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Some words are like seeds tossed into a garden. It's not the talk that makes them grow. The first anniversary of the Turner Circle found us in a bigger room because the fellowship hall got new floors and we didn't want to scuff them. 40 women now, and a handful of men who hovered at the back like they didn't know if they were allowed to be vulnerable under fluorescent lights. We held our state of the circle, where we named the things we'd survived and the ones we were still in the middle of. And when the time came to talk about grants, we all looked at each other and laughed because that's not the kind of work we wanted, and yet we had been doing it anyway. Small envelopes for pharmacy copays, rides coordinated like a ballet, casseroles labeled with date and reheating instructions like war plans. A reporter came once, a young white woman with a canvas bag that said, "Do good better," and asked if she could write about us. "You're like a grassroots nonprofit, right? You're addressing elder financial abuse." "We are a room and a pot and a clipboard," I said. "That's the headline," Laverne whispered behind me, and we both snorted. The reporter wrote anyway, and when the story ran, 3 more women showed up the next Wednesday clutching the paper like a passport. Sometimes I think of the day the letter came and how it cracked my life open like a tree splits a sidewalk. I used to imagine my old age as a narrow path, church, grandkids, potlucks, and naps. No one tells you that after the shock and shame and the careful sentences, there waits a field. Boundaries are gates. Boundaries open outward if you build them right. Mine did. On a warm April afternoon, I drove up to Blue Ridge by myself, the wellness retreat center, because yes, they still did it, only they did it small and honest and slow. Had a public day where local caregivers could come for a soaked in the cedar tubs and a nap in a hammock, and a lunch that tasted like somebody thought about you while they chopped. Brianna met me in the gravel lot with a kind of shy pride, the kind that knows it came through a tunnel carrying its own fear like a rucksack and survived anyway. "I don't run it," she said. "I consult sometimes. I sit with people. I bring them extra towels. Those are 2 good verbs. Sit, bring." Ari was there and waved like she was remembering the day on my porch when I told her I am not a space. She didn't try to hug me. She did say, quietly, "You were right." Jasper was not there. Good. Men like him don't like small and honest. They like big and shiny and fast, the kind of projects that run on fumes and women's goodwill. When I soaked my feet in the cedar tub and leaned back, I thought about Lewis, about his letter that smelled faintly of the past and motor oil. I thought about afterward, the part of life that rarely gets a song. I pictured his shop, the screws in the baby jars, the way he taught our girl to be brave, and how he accidentally taught her to be hard where she needed to be soft. I breathed and let the steam meet the old hurts like a fog rolling over a field and just sit there until the sun could lift it. At the end of the day, before I got into my car, Brianna hugged me. Not the hug of a child begging for a magic eraser. Not the hug of a con artist who doesn't yet know she's acting. The hug of a woman who knows the weight of what she did and the weight of what she carries and stretches her arms anyway, because that's how people survive. "Thank you," she said, a sentence that means the most when it comes late. "You're welcome," I said, the second sentence that saves the world. I still count. I still keep my notebook. The payments roll in like slow tide, and I record each one not as a punishment, but as a needle pricking a bead onto a string. I labeled them with small notes that make me smile: dentist paycheck, hostess tips, tax return boost. I have a section where I write down the things I buy myself with money that isn't stolen: good shoes, seat cushions, fancy butter. I have a section called Neighbor Grace, where I list the rides I gave, the soup delivered, the nights I went to a midnight ER to sit with the woman who had no one else to tell her the nurse who rolled her in was her friend. The roof got fixed. The rain ran where it was supposed to. I bought a fruit tree for the backyard, a fig, because figs know how to thrive on neglect and then surprise you with sweetness. I read that on the internet and decided to believe it, the way you decide to believe a fortune cookie that tells you what you already knew if you'd bothered to ask yourself. One evening in July, our circle hosted a seminar called "Paper is a Boundary," and I stood at the front because in this story, I am the one who lived long enough to learn how to speak in rooms. I held up a copy of my will in a neon folder. "This is my voice on paper," I said. "This keeps my daughter from having to guess. This keeps men with smiles from telling my story without me. This lets my grandkids know what I wanted without anyone whispering, 'Get you some paper.'" Afterwards, a shy woman with a gray braid came up and said, "I wish I had heard you last year." And I took her hand and answered something that felt truer than anything else. "I wish I had heard me 10 years ago." That night, when the hall was mopped and the chairs were stacked and the last lemon bar had disappeared into someone's purse for later, I slipped out the side door and sat on the steps. The air hurt good the way southern summer air hurts, thick as a quilt. Laverne sat beside me and handed me a bottle of water without being asked. We watched fireflies blink like tiny applause. "You know," she said, head tilted toward the dark where the kids were catching the green specks and squealing, "I never understood that scripture until now." "Which scripture?" I asked, because she keeps at least 5 on her tongue at any given time. "The one about he restoreth my soul," she said. "I always thought that meant he gives me a nap. But after watching you this year, I think it also means he gives me back what took me. Not the money necessarily, the parts of me I gave away and forgot to ask for back." My chest went warm. "And I asked for it back?" I said. "You did," she said, "and you got it." I went home and took a bath. I used the fancy soap Brianna gave me for Mother's Day that smells like clementines and something I can't name, something like Clean Hope. I blew out the candle before it burned my little fingers because I'm old and careful, and I tucked myself into my bed with the new sheets that feel like polite clouds. I said my prayers. I included my girl by name, and I included myself by name too, because sometimes we forget to do that, to include our own names in the list of those who need mercy. The next morning was grand. I opened my mailbox and found, between the circular on 4-for-1 cantaloupes and a jury duty summons for a man who's been dead 10 years, a check. Not from Brianna. From a woman named Tasha with a note attached and careful handwriting. For the rides jar, because I made it to work on time all month thanks to y'all. I pressed the paper to my chest and stood in the driveway with my robe flapping in the breeze like a ridiculous queen wearing a bath towel as a cape, because joy will make a fool of you and you will not care. One evening, I heard the gate to my backyard creak, a sound I know because no one but raccoons and my grandchildren uses that gate. I walked out onto the porch, and there was Brianna, under the fig tree, which had already grown 3 leaves larger than a man's hand. She was looking up into it like my husband used to look at football scores. "It's beautiful," she said without turning. "How did you know it would grow?" "I didn't. I hoped." She nodded. "I have a job offer," she said, turning around. "Not a glamorous one, a real one. Development assistant at the community center. Benefits, a boss, a desk with a drawer that sticks, I'm sure. They said I could help write grants and coordinate volunteers. I said I don't want to be in charge. They said, "Good. You'll be good at that," I said. "You like people. You'll be making rooms, not empires." She smiled. "I'm tired of trying to build a castle on sand. Sand is for sitting and thinking," I said. "Castles are for toddlers." We stood there a long minute just breathing the same air, mother and daughter, in a yard where new things grow because old women dare to plant them without asking anyone for permission. The leaves rustled, somewhere a dog barked, a train moaned a mile away. Not sad, but necessary. Brianna put her head on my shoulder the way she used to when she was little and her chest hurt and she needed to borrow my breath for a while. I let her. You can forgive with your shoulder even when your bank account is still counting. At last she said, "I paid $1,000 this month." And I didn't clap, but I felt the clapping start somewhere in my ribs and rise like birds. Now, when I sit at my kitchen table in the morning with my tea and my little notebook, the light comes through the window just so, scattering itself across the wood like a handful of small coins. I read the paper mail because Miss Alvarez told me to ask for paper and because paper makes things real. I boil the collards slow. I answer my texts many hours later because the phone is not a bell I am attached to anymore. I keep the letter from Peachtree in a folder labeled "Proof I Didn't Imagine This," and the letter from Lewis in a folder labeled "Men Try." I keep the promissory note in a folder labeled "Women Succeed," because sometimes you have to rename things to make your life be the story you can live with. Once in a while, I pull out my first list, the one where I wrote what I have given, and I run my finger down the line of all the little gifts I turned into habits. I do not regret them. I refuse. Love given is not love wasted. But on the last page of that notebook, I wrote the new list in a hand steadier than any I've had in years. What I kept. I wrote my home, my future, my name, my choice. Then I added today's date and one more. What I am building, I wrote and put a dot after it like a heartbeat. Then I closed the book and walked out into my yard to see how big the fig leaves had grown while I wasn't looking.